Hi everyone, welcome back to the DrCliffAuD vlog. This is vlog number 30, and in today's vlog I come to you with a heavy heart because the profession of audiology just lost a terrific friend, colleague, and mentor. Just a few days ago we learned that Dr. Eric Hagberg passed away out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And in case you don't know who Dr. Eric Hagberg was, he was a private practice audiologist out in Youngstown, Ohio. He retired a few years ago, but he's someone who really epitomized what an audiologist should be inside of the profession of audiology. He was a mentor to many young audiologists and audiology students, and he's going to be sorely missed. Actually, my first experience with Dr. Hagberg was when he called my clinic back in 2017. And keep in mind, this was right when I started my clinic. It was before I had any substantial amount of videos up on my YouTube channel talking about best practices. And the purpose of that phone call was because he was looking for a hearing care provider to send a family member to out here in Arizona. And he had recently moved to Arizona because he had just retired, but he was basically trying to find someone who followed best practices so he could confidently refer his family member. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but Dr. Hagberg was actually a past president of the Academy of Doctors of Audiology. And it probably is a good thing that I didn't know that at the time, because I probably would have been significantly more nervous when I was talking to him about the best practices that I follow. Nonetheless, his family member ended up coming in to receive treatment from me, and that wasn't the last time I had a chance to interact with Dr. Hagberg. He actually had an incident maybe a year after that where he had acquired some impression material because he was going to be giving a family member ear mold impressions for shooter's plugs. And anyone who knows Dr. Hagberg really well knows that he was an avid competitive shooter, and something that I also related to him with because of my time serving in the military. He also was someone who'd served in the military during the Vietnam era, and of course I served back in Operation Iraqi Freedom. But nonetheless, that impression material didn't set inside of the family member's ear canals, meaning it didn't solidify. So this individual had a bunch of this, silicone goop inside of their ears that had to be removed, and he didn't have the instrumentation to do it. So he actually brought that family member into my clinic, and the entire time he was making jokes about how silly it was that he had done these impressions and it didn't set, even though no one could have predicted that would have happened. I've received bad, impression material before that didn't set, and is actually one of the reasons now that I prefer to do digital 3D ear impressions. Another thing that not a lot of individuals know about Dr. Hagberg is that he was a huge advocate for the profession of audiology, and was actually one of the individuals who was responsible for audiology going from a master's level education to a doctorate level education. And so, quite honestly speaking, if it wasn't for audiologists like Dr. Hagberg, you would not have the DrCliffAuD YouTube channel at this point. It would probably just be called the Cliff YouTube channel, which just doesn't have the same ring to it. Another thing that you should be aware of is that Dr. Hagberg was instrumental in pushing forward the profession of audiology with legislation like the 18x18 initiative. This is something that he announced as the ADA president back in 2012, and it has now progressed into the Medicare Audiologist Access and Services Act. Now, I'm going to read off the three main components to this act, which are critical for individuals with Medicare benefits. The first one is practitioner status within Medicare. This would allow audiologists the autonomy to make clinical recommendations and practice the full scope of audiology and vestibular care as allowed by their state license and as dictated by their educational requirements and competencies. The second one is direct Medicare access. This would eliminate the need for physician order required for a Medicare beneficiary to receive coverage of medically necessary covered audiology and vestibular services. Now, this one's really important because when you think about it, when I have a patient come into my clinic who has Medicare benefits and they need a hearing test, if they want their Medicare benefits to pay for that hearing test, they actually have to go to a physician to get a referral to come see me so I can do that test and submit it to Medicare. Seems ridiculous, right? Well, that's because it is. Because you should be able to have direct access to a doctor of audiology if you're having difficulty hearing. But currently, in the archaic system that is set up right now, is that you actually have to go in and see a physician just to tell them that you think you have hearing difficulty so they can refer you to go see an audiologist. Okay, and the third one is comprehensive Medicare benefit. This would allow for Medicare coverage of medically necessary covered treatment services services such as vestibular rehabilitation, cerumen removal, which is also known as earwax removal, and oral rehabilitation provided by audiologists practicing within their state-defined scope of practice. And again, if I have a patient come into my clinic and they have a bunch of earwax inside of their ears, I cannot remove that earwax and submit that bill to Medicare currently. Currently, individuals with Medicare who come in directly to see me will have to pay out of pocket for me to remove their earwax for them. So what do they have to do? Right now, you technically would have to go either to a primary care or ENT to have that earwax removed if you want it covered by Medicare. Other than perhaps an ear, nose, and throat physician, audiologists are the most highly qualified individuals to be able to remove earwax from your ears. And currently, you can't have Medicare cover that service with an audiologist. The Medicare Audiologist Access and Services Act would actually increase the ability for individuals with hearing difficulty to directly seek care from an audiologist and have those services covered by Medicare, which is something that is huge for Medicare beneficiaries. Okay, so why am I talking about this so much? Well, the reason I'm talking about this legislation is because this is the thing that Dr. Eric Hagberg wanted the most. And it's something that even after his retirement, he was pushing for day in and day out. And I think that the best way to honor Dr. Hagberg is actually to help push forward this legislation. And the way that we're going to be able to do that is either by going to chooseaudiology.org and donating some money, or going there and just writing your legislators with Congressional Connect. I will link chooseaudiology.org in the description of this video, and if I've ever given you any amount of value from my channel, this is something that you can do to give back a little bit, not just in support of yourself to advance this legislation, but in the support of every other individual with hearing loss who has Medicare benefits. Now, I want to finish this vlog off with some stories from individuals who knew Dr. Eric Hagberg well. The first one is from Dana Patton Urbanski. She wrote, "I'll never forget being a first-year AUD student, doing clinical hours with him, and I mentioned something about the field, and he said, it's a profession, not a field. Never call it a field. I never used the word field ever again, even 7 years later, and never will. He was a tough personality, but he really cared too. He went out of his way to help me as an AUD student when I was in a tough situation, even though he barely knew me. He was a champion for audiology and audiologists, no matter what, always." Here's another one from Stephanie Shayeski. She wrote, "Thank you, Dr. Patton Urbanski. I know that Eric will be so proud of you now. I have had the pleasure of working with Eric for the past 11 years, aided them advancing 18 by 18, the Audiology Patient Choice Act, and the Medicare Audiologist Access and Services Act. Eric was a pioneer who was instrumental in advancing audiology as an autonomous doctoring profession. He dispensed hearing aids before it was ethical. He selflessly served AFA's and ADA's efforts to advance the AUD as a clinical doctoring degree. He worked tirelessly to ensure the proper and appropriate recognition of audiologists as doctors with all the commensurate rights and responsibilities within the Medicare system. Most importantly, though, Eric has advanced the profession of audiology by empowering, socializing, and training audiology students to their full potential within this wonderful profession. He was one of my dearest friends and one of audiology's most loyal and faithful advocates, serving as ADA's Advocacy Committee Chair until the day he passed away. He will never be forgotten. The best way to remember and love this great man is to finish his work. Help pass the Medicare Audiologist Access and Services Act." This next one is from Rachel Megan Favory, and I, to be honest with you, have no idea how to correctly pronounce her last name. That could have been right, I have no idea. And she wrote, "Eric was the first person to introduce me to ADA while I was a student at a AAA convention. He was the one who made me understand why audiology is our profession, not a field. He helped me understand why autonomy, ownership, and practice is so very important. He spent time explaining about the past of our profession so students and young professionals could learn from it. He had one of the gentlest hearts and desired to help students and audiologists in any way he could. He was the kind of person who, through his colorful language and storytelling, was able to capture the listener and take you on a journey while keeping you laughing along the way. He was an inspiring public speaker and true advocate for massa that made me want to fight as hard as he did to advance our profession. He was my friend, a mentor, and will be so dearly missed. Our profession lost a special advocate yesterday." And finally, I want to share a comment from Audra Branham, which is the audiologist who purchased Dr. Hagberg's clinic from him several years ago. She wrote, I have so much to say, but it's still so hard to find the words right now. I knew Eric for 10 years. I started working with him right out of my AUD program. I eventually worked to take over the practice he put everything into and was proud to know him. He always offered the best advice, so on his last day in the office before retirement, I said, okay, last day, what is the best advice you can give me going forward in practice ownership? And he said, just be honest with your patients, treat them well, and you'll be fine. I remember every word like it was yesterday. I live by that motto, and I know our growth is tied to this. He was an intelligent, funny, wonderful man. He was like a father figure to me, an amazing friend, the best mentor. We kept in touch often through his retirement, and I will miss his wisdom and humor immensely. He gave me purpose as a new grad and vision in the profession to see what it could be. I owe him everything. Dr. Hagberg, you had a profound influence on many audiologists in this profession and thousands of patients throughout your career, and you are going to be sorely missed.